everyone, and welcome to Susan's Cooking School. Today we're going to be making one of my favorites, olive bread with fresh rosemary. We'll be using oil-cured olives and fresh rosemary leaves. Enjoy! I have here 1 1/4 cups of warm water. I'm going to add 1 1/2 teaspoons of active dry yeast. I'm just going to give this a little stir and just let it sit until the yeast is softened. This only takes a couple of minutes. I'm going to take my 1 pound of bread flour, add 2 teaspoons of kosher salt, and 1 tablespoon of extra virgin olive oil. Okay, our yeast is softened. Now we'll just add this to the remaining ingredients in the bowl. If I were going to knead this by hand, I would take a spoon in here and mix this up and then put it on the counter to knead it. But I'm going to use the mixer today, so I'm going to take my dough hook, since it's going to get dirty anyway, and I'm going to give this a little mixing by hand. This just helps it go a little faster once it's on the mixer. So let's see how this feels to me. Feels pretty good, but I think it might be a little dry. So I'm going to add a tablespoon more of water. Don't want to add too much water because your dough will get too soft and too sticky. It feels pretty good. You can see all the ingredients have come together, and it's fairly soft. I don't want it to be too wet because it won't knead well, and if I have it too dry, then my dough is going to be dry and it won't have a nice crumb. So we'll put this on the mixer. Put our dough hook in. Raise a bowl. Now I'm going to mix this at speed 2 for about 5 minutes. Okay, time's up. Take our dough hook out. We're just going to let this dough rest covered for about 20 minutes. 20 minutes is up. Now we're just going to take the dough and give it what we call a re-rounding. And take the edges and bring it towards the middle. And I'm just bringing the edges around and pinching it. Then I'm going to turn it over and you'll see how much nicer it looks now. So that's called rounding. Now we're going to let this rise until it's about double in volume. Depending on your room temperature, you may want to put some warm water into a pan. And set this inside, which will help maintain a nice cozy temperature for your dough. Let's check our dough and see if it's ready. It's been about 40 minutes. I'll put a little flour on my finger and press into the dough. And you'll see that the indentation stays and the dough is about doubled in volume. So this is ready to go on to the next step. Here's our risen dough. I'm going to take a little flour and put it on my counter. And just scoop this dough out. Just going to put a little flour on the top, and I'm going to cut this in half with my bench scraper. Now I'm going to round each of these pieces. You don't want excess flour on this when you are rounding it. So I'm just going to take edges, as we did before, and bring them to the center. Until I have a nice smooth surface and the dough is stretched tight over the top. Do the same thing with the second piece. Now I'm going to coat them with just a little flour so they don't stick. And I'm going to cover them with plastic. and let them rest for about 10 or 15 minutes. Alright, it's been 10 minutes. Let's take our first piece of dough, put a little flour down on the table, and we're just going to press this out into a rectangle. I don't measure it. Just going to press it out roughly, whatever shape it goes. If the dough doesn't want to stretch out for you at all, you can let it rest a little bit longer. So now I'm going to take half my rosemary leaves, and if they're big you can cut some in half or break some in half. It's pretty strong, so I don't like to use too much rosemary. We'll take half our olives and spread those around. I'm just going to kind of press them in a little bit. Now we'll roll this up jelly roll fashion. Tightly roll and stretch just a little bit so that the ends come together. And then I'm going to seal the ends. I'm just kind of stretching, pulling a little bit and sealing it up good. And then I'll just seal my ends, just pinch them together. And if you want to give this a little bit more of a baguette shape, you can roll this out just slightly and taper your ends. And I'll flour this. And I'm going to put it on some parchment paper here. I'm going to also flour this, so make sure the dough doesn't stick while it's rising. I'll put one piece down, cover it, and now I'll do the same thing with the other piece. Pulling to make it tight, seal it. If you have a warm spot that you can put these in, go right ahead. I'm just going to let these sit right here and we'll let them rise until they're nice and poofed out. Alright, our loaves have been proofing for about 40 minutes. Let's check them and see if they're done. We'll do the little finger test again. And you can see the indentation stays. And they're about double in volume, although that's kind of hard to tell. I put a little flour on my peel. I'm going to make sure that this is loose, and it is because we put enough flour there. Although if these stick really bad and you can't move these loaves after, a little trick is to cut the parchment paper right across and bake it right with the parchment paper on it. It works fine. So I'm going to brush these with a little extra virgin olive oil. I want to make sure not to get oil on the bottom of these loaves because it'll stick to my peel. Now we're going to sprinkle it with some sea salt, which I have here. If you don't have sea salt, you can use some other form of salt. One important thing is do not salt these loaves until right before you're ready to bake them, because the salt will dry out the crust terribly and your dough won't rise in the oven like it should. So make sure you salt right before they go in the oven. Now I'm going to slash these. I like to use a serrated knife. I've tried many other tools for this. I still like this the best. A really nice sharp serrated bread knife is what I use. So as you're cutting, you just kind of turn your knife and go shallow to the surface of the dough. I don't want to cut deep, but I'm kind of turning and keeping it somewhat parallel. You can see the filling sort of popping through here. So now I'm going to put a little flour on my hands, put this on the peel, and take it over to the oven. So my oven has been preheating for quite a while because the stone takes time to get hot. So here's my loaf before it goes in. Alright. I'll put the peel on the edge of the stone, wiggle it a little bit, make sure your loaf is loose, and let it slide out. Now we'll do the same thing with the other loaf. The same thing, put this in the oven, shake it a little bit, let it slide right off. I'm about to pour about a half a cup of boiling water into a preheated pan in the bottom of my gas oven to create steam. I do not suggest that you do this in your home oven. Never do this with an electric oven. Please be cautious with whatever you decide to do. Okay, these have baked now for a total of 25 minutes at 400 degrees. They look nice. A nice hollow sound. Slide these onto a rack to cool, and then we'll slice it in a little while. If your loaves have a lot of excess flour on the bottom, you can always brush that off after they come out of the oven. Extra virgin olive oil with a little pepper. It's extraordinary. Hope you enjoyed this video and hope you make this bread. Let me know how it goes.